Shalom Aleichem and welcome to Online Smicha. It is brought in Shari Tshuva on the Shulchan Aruch. Shara, if we bring some svarim, Ra lemiktsas rabbanim, that he saw the different rabbanim shatamid haya asukim begufei halacha, that during the year they were heavily involved in matters of halacha, and that was their main avodah ubechibureihem and all their svarim. But over Chodesh Elul hayu manichem ktsas mesidram Lilmoid Girsa Rak Tachnunim. It came to Chodesh Elul, they deviated a little from their normal routine. Instead of learning in Yonim of Halacha, they spend time on Girsa and Tachnunim, and in Yonim of Avodah and Yonim of Tshuva. So we see the focus in Chodesh Elul is an Indian even more than regular Halacha in Yoni HaTshuva. Everything is bashgacha pratis, and the Welt, the Goyish Welt, the secular world, tumbled lately about a Maisa with a lion. Obviously, this is a lesson for every Yid. The Pasuk says, and the Shulchan Aruch it's brought, that the Avodah of Chodesh Elul, you could make reference to this from the Pasuk, Aryeh Shag Mi Lo Yira. A lion, the Navi says, a lion roars, mi lo yira. Who will not be afraid when you hear a roaring lion? So the Mefarshim, the Darshei Rishume say, Aryeh is a Rosh Hashanah, Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippurim, and Hoshana Rabbah. That when these days approach, the days of starting from Elul all the way to the Gemar Chasima, which is Hoshana Rabbah, you hear the roaring of the lion, mi lo yira. How is it possible for someone not to be afraid? The fear of the screaming, of the roaring of the lion. Why is it, over and over again in the Gemara, we find obviously the lion being the Melech Shebachayis, the king of the animals, but we find that there's many references made connecting HaKadosh Baruch Hu as to a lion, to Aryeh. The Gemara in Brachas says that there are 3 or 4 mishmaris, parts of each night, and says the Gemara, and this is what happened. The Gemara says, Shalish Mishmaris Hava Alayla, there are 3 parts to every night. Val Kol Mishmaru Mishmar Yosef HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'shoyeg Ka'ari. And in every part of the night, Hashem Kvayachol sits and roars like a lion. And the Gersa later on is, he says, Oy vey, Oy lebanim, shabavayneseyem hechrafti as basi. Woe are to the children that based on their sins I was forced to destroy their home. V'sarafti as heichali, and I had to destroy. I had to burn my heichal. V'higleisim lebeina umois, and I was forced to send them in exile amongst all the nations. Again, this is something the Pasuk, the Gemara makes reference. The Gemara says, Shoyeg Kari. And there's a raya from a Pasuk. There's beautiful, beautiful Perushim in the Gemara and the Ein Yaakov. What does it literally mean? The Eibishter being Shoyeg. What does it mean? He roars like a lion. And it gets even a little more strange. When you read the Gemara goes on to say that each Ashmira has a siman to know when that Ashmira is finished. One is connected to a donkey, one is connected to a young child, and one is connected to a dog. And it's a lot of beautiful drushes could be said on that Gemara. But again, the Eibishter roars like a lion and says, Oy lebanim, Shabbat v'niseyem hechrafti es beisi v'sarafti as heichali. And the Mefarshim, it's brought from the Gra, that he says, what are the 2 Lashonis? Hechrafti as basi. I destroyed the temple, their home, and I Rahman al-Atzlan burnt Heichali. So it says that in the process, Rahman al-Atzlan of the Churban, there were certain parts that were able to be destroyed completely, certain parts were able to be burnt, and certain parts were only partially destroyed. And that's how he makes reference to both of these inyanim. Or they're talking about the Beis HaMikdash de Lamata and the Beis HaMikdash de Lamayla. And Hashem says, if the Yidden are in Golus, I'm forced to be in Golus to destroy my Beis Hamikdash too. I will not go back to my home until I know that the Yidden are back in their home, in their Beis Hamikdash. Aryeh Shog, a line roaring. That's Chodesh Elul. There is a mimer from the Tzemach Tzedek, where the Tzemach Tzedek connects it to a fascinating Gemara in Chulin. The Gemara in Chulin says that Amalek Chulin Daf Nun Tes Amid Beis. Amalek Kesel Rabbi Yeshua. The king says to Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, Elekechem ka'aryeh masil. I read that you compare your God to an aryeh, to a lion from this pasuk, Aryeh Shag Mila Yirya. My Rabusei, what's the big deal of him being a lion? Parsha Katil Aryeh, a hunter, a person who knows how to hunt, or a person who knows how to capture, could any person who knows how to deal with animals could take control of an animal, could take control even of an aryeh, even of a lion. So what's the big deal of the Eibishter being compared to a lion? Amar lei, so Rabbi Yeshua answers him and says, Lav kahai arya muscle. We're not talking about a regular lion in the cage, a regular lion running around that you could hunt. Ka'arya de be'iloi muscle. I'm talking about the type, the pasuk is making reference to the type of lions that are around in Bei Eloi. Rashi says it's Shem Yar. It's some jungle. They are, whoa, those lions are phenomenal. How phenomenal are those lions? So the Keser says, let me see them. He says, I can't. Those lions are too dangerous. He says, I really want you to show this to me. So Rabbi Yeshua davened. One of those lions came out of its place. Ki hava marchik arba mea parsi. When he was away 400 parsois. 400 parsois away. He roared once, and the one time that he roared, it caused such fear that the Gemara is different expressions. Either the women, Rahman al-Itzlan, who were pregnant, were from the fear miscarried. Some of your stories say the teeth, the men out of fear, the teeth fell 400 parsois far away. When he came closer, when it came 300 parsois, the fear doubled. He gave one roar and the fear doubled until the Keser says, please, stop it. I can't handle it. So obviously when we compare Hashem to an Aryeh, we're comparing, as the Gemara says, to Aryeh, that the Pachad, if the Pachad is needed, it is very much felt. So what's the $1 million question? The $1 million question is, how is it that from one hand, obviously, Mila Yira, and yet we see that people don't get the awakening call, don't get the wake-up message. So this is also a Gemara. The Gemara says every Russia knows the truth deep down, that he's only here temporary. And he knows that he'll have to give a din v'cheshbon. So why is he behaving that way? So the Gemara says because he has chelev on top of his heart. A chelev, fat, blocking his heart. What does that mean? So I heard somebody explaining that in the olden times, when the soldiers went to war, they had armor. That was armor as a protection. And if the opposing enemies were shooting arrows and shooting whatever weapons they were throwing, so there is the armor, but then they also put a layer of grease, a layer of fat on the armor. Why? A layer of chelev. So whatever comes shooting towards them glides off, slips off, it doesn't even enter. This is what we have to do in Chodesh Elul. Sometimes we have created a situation where there is chelev on our heart. Everything we see, we get affected. The Rambam says and the Gemara says that we get affected from our surroundings, we get affected from our friends, our neighbors, but everything gets washed away. Chelev doesn't allow anything positive to go into your heart. So the avodah of Chodesh Elul, when the main focus is to be mekasher again to Avinu Shebashamayim, is to make sure to wash off the chelev, let everything go in, let the Eibishter wants us. The Eibishter cries, as it says in the Frierdiker Rebbe Maimarim, that the Eibishter is Shoyei Kari. Shoyei Kari is from the Pnimius. The Eibishter wants us. Hashem says, Oy loy labanim, and I'm not settled until my children are settled. Just we have to wash off the chelev to let the Eibishter enter our hearts, and each one of us will be blessed with a ksiva v'chsima toiva, zol zayna, yor of geula, matam asar tzvachim.